Good morning. I'd like to talk today briefly about hemp production in the southeast United States from a grower's perspective as we stand here in 2020. Quickly would like to thank Dr. Larry Smart for the invitation to speak to this event today, and thank you for everybody's time for tuning in and listening and being interested in what is a pretty polarizing subject in hemp production. Quickly about me, I'm the corporate agronomist for the Triest Ag Group, which is a ag products and services company nationwide here in the U.S. Formerly was agronomy manager for Pixis International and agronomist for NCDA and crops unit manager for a NC State research station. So the bulk of my experience in hemp to this point has been helping growers in the Southeast, primarily in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia, learn how to implement this crop into their system and how to leverage their legacy knowledge and their infrastructure to be competitive in this space. The biggest common factor for hemp production right now, especially in the southeast, is consolidation. The style grower or the number of growers growing this crop is starting to consolidate. Everything is going to the cheapest cost of production that can produce the highest quality, which is not surprising when you're talking about an ag commodity or an ag product. But the tobacco producers and sweet potato producers in the southeast U.S. are starting to dominate the landscape because they are subsidizing and dividing the cost of infrastructure, labor, and just overall knowledge gap to produce this crop. And they are doing an exceptional job. They're taking systems that they've implemented for a long time, and are subsidizing the cost of those systems across three crops. If you're talking about hemp, tobacco, and sweet potatoes, most importantly is they have labor associated with those crops to be able to handle hemp, and they're spreading that cost around. So it makes them extremely competitive from a price perspective in this market. Right now, everything is driven by a transplant system, moving more toward feminized seed versus clones. Again, those tobacco producers, vegetable producers, sweet potato farmers, they have infrastructure for growing out transplants. They've been growing out transplants their entire careers for the most part. They've learned some of the nuances, root bound issues, fertility issues around hemp and the light sensitivity. And now that they have learned that, they are very effectively producing a transplant at a pretty reduced cost. Feminized seed is cheaper now, more widely available, so farmers are gravitating that way. Everything is a transplant system. We go to the field with a good plant. It reduces risk, and direct seeding is very difficult because of inconsistent weather and large rainfall events. It's just very difficult here in the southeast to count on a direct seeded crop. Looking at production systems, what you see here in bare ground production is dominating the landscape. It's the cheapest cost of production. Again, it's what you see here in this picture is basically identical to a tobacco style setup, 48-inch rows, same transplanter, bedding equipment, cultivation, everything we would use to handle a tobacco crop, we're handling with hemp. Generally, our transplanting dates are late June, early July, which is after we have come out of setting tobacco and starting to lay that crop by. So the timing really lines up. And you've got to be able to plow, obviously, to handle weed control with the lack of pesticides. But ultimately, this is what is controlling production in the southeast right now. If you're a grower who does not have that cultivation equipment or you are not in those systems, that is where plasticulture comes in. Obviously, weed control is superior with plasticulture, but this does not scale as well. It's more expensive, generally $800 to $1,000 an acre more expensive. You have to have irrigation. Your site where you can put it is limited. So this is a viable production system. It works well. We've learned a lot about how to fine tune this, but it still is dropping back in comparison to bare ground, and particularly bare ground uh, with drip systems installed. That's also a very popular method. Greenhouse production would be the next. This is primarily being used for feminized seed production or clone production by most growers. Floral production in a greenhouse is simply cost prohibitive. It's too expensive in comparison to an outdoor production system, whether bare ground or plasticulture. It does provide you a season extension component. The issue there is right now there's plenty of hemp to meet the market, so the need for season extension is limited. If you do have a market that you can get a premium for growing in a shoulder season, then that's great. It is viable. You can get a higher quality product due to being able to keep that crop dry, protected from the elements. But for the most part, greenhouse production is cost prohibitive right now. You look at harvesting and handling and how growers are using uh, again, that same infrastructure that they have on farm to handle this crop. Widely being used are tobacco bulk barn drying systems and sweet potato curing houses. So just the ability to control the environment and quickly air dry this crop down to about 10% moisture seems to be the industry standard currently. Works extremely well. We learned a lot in the last 2 years about how to handle that system. But again, these systems were already on farm. Growers intimately knew how to use them, and just another way to use that infrastructure. But being a very effective right now in getting that crop dried down. Mechanization is coming in on whole plant harvesting. There's several different methods. Burley tobacco harvester was pretty popular, and several companies are working on a system now where a grower can mechanize the harvesting of this plant. Continuing on harvesting and handling, how do you get that crop off the stalk? This was one of the largest costs in the production system outside of the cost of plants most recently, but that dried flower material has to be removed from the stalk. What you see in this picture is an example of a delivery case and an example of what the material looks like for the most part when it's being produced in this system. Um, it was about 200 man hours an acre to do this by hand. Obviously, at hemp prices now approaching anywhere from $5 to $10 a pound, you simply cannot incur that cost. Mechanization is here in several forms of thrashers, modified combines that are effectively taking this flower material off. So we drop that down to 10 to 20 man hours per acre, again in those various forms. So we have quickly cut cost in the production system of this crop, and there is a certain subset of growers who are doing a significantly better job handling it and producing it, and at a much lower cost than what we've seen in the early stages of hemp production. So I'll wrap it up with that. That's a quick snapshot into how a grower's handling this crop now. And thank you for your time. Look forward to your questions as we move forward.